I'm going to crank through this pretty fast. I might skip over a few parts, but essentially what this talk is about is stepping outside of your comfort zone and being creative outside the context of work, outside of your project work. Being creative within just your life in general for no other reason than being creative. And it's when you do that, you'll kind of uncover new realms of opportunity that after a time of making it a habit, a good creative habit of doing this, you're going to find opportunity to take those moments of creativity and inspiration, and they will apply to your work. You'll find areas where you can plug them in, and they'll become practical outworkings of your project work. But it all starts with being creative, creative outside the context of work. Knowing that I was going to give this talk to a bunch of creatives at the How Design Conference, I felt I had to do that as I gave the talk. I had to step out of my comfort zone. And so I originally thought, okay, I'm going to dress up like Bigfoot and give this talk. And then I realized I'm really not stepping outside my comfort zone, because part of me kind of wanted to dress up like Bigfoot. And that's when I brought my daughter in, and I said, okay, you're going to the costume store with me. And she picked out this costume that I wore when I gave my talk. I will never wear that again. It was really hot, and about 30 minutes into the talk, I came pretty close to passing out, and my friend Justin, so I just wanted to show that, because what I'm asking you, some of the things I'll go over, you might say, well, I don't draw, or I'm not sure I'd want to do that, and that's okay. Part of stepping outside of your comfort zone is trying things you might not be comfortable with. And I just wanted to show you that I did that when I gave the talk, but no, you guys have way too much humidity down here. There's no way I had a hard enough time walking from the car to come in here, let alone to wear a costume. So when it comes to creativity, we all struggle. This talk is based from my own struggles with creativity. You're faced with solving a design problem, but you feel like your creativity is running on fumes. This is pretty normal. At some point, we all struggle with this scenario. Knowing how to understand and foster creativity is going to greatly help you in establishing a strategy where you can approach it effectively and capitalize on it, actually. If there is one point above all else I want you to walk away with, it's that the key to avoiding the rut of the daily routine is through the use of creativity outside the realm of your client projects. And right off the bat, I'm going to give a lot of examples of people who I think are doing this well or have done this to one degree or another. And the first one I want to share with you is my friend Mike Jones. He lives in Georgia. And for no other reason, he has a pretty big family. And after they had their most recent child, he decided to brand a special moment of his life, and that was his vasectomy. Obviously, this wasn't a client project. Nobody hired him. Nobody hired him to do this, but this is what I'm talking about. You can take your skill sets that you use to market whatever product or service for your clients, and you can use that same modus operandi to exercise your creativity in fun ways for no other reason than just to do it. Pursuing creativity doesn't have to be complicated. It can be a simple response to everyday situations. And the next example I'm going to show you is an animator and designer by the name of Adam Patch. And him and his wife had bought some wine that they had never tried, and apparently his wife had a little too much to drink one night, and he happened to capture her telling a joke and recorded it on his iPhone. And then that recording inspired this animation.
Okay, there were 2 corn chips, and they were friends. They were in school together, and they were playing on the playground together. And one chip thought the other chip was being unfair. And he told him, I don't think you are being fair. I'm your friend, why aren't you being fair? And the other chip was like, I don't think you know me. And then the other chip was like, come on, let's just talk about it. And then the other chip was like, no, I'm not your friend. No, I'm not your friend.
Most people don't understand what we do for a living. The people who have a creative mind tend to be misunderstood and looked at as either immature or even crazy by those unfamiliar with our industry or even the company we might work for. Now, but this shouldn't surprise nor dissuade you from pursuing new creative opportunities. I love my job, and I'm thankful that I get to do art and design for a living. But regardless of how much we may enjoy our job, it still may be a struggle at times to be creative and stay inspired to create. And all we need to do to avoid routine and step out of our comfort zone, and doing that comes, it might make us creatively cringe at times. I thought this video kind of captures that kind of moment.
Tuna on toast, coleslaw, cup of coffee.
Yeah. No, wait a minute. I always have tuna on toast. Nothing's ever worked out for me with tuna on toast. I want the complete opposite of tuna on toast. Chicken salad on rye, untoasted, with a side of potato salad and a cup of tea.
Well, there's no telling what can happen from this.
You know, chicken salad's not the opposite of tuna. Salmon's the opposite of tuna, because salmon swim against the current, and the tuna swim with it.
Good for the tuna.
George, you know, that woman just looked at you.
So what? What am I supposed to do?
Go talk to her.
Elaine, bald men with no jobs and no money who live with their parents don't approach strange women.
Well, here's your chance to try the opposite. Instead of tuna salad and being intimidated by women, chicken salad and going right up to them.
Yeah, I should do the opposite. I should.
If every instinct you have is wrong, then the opposite would have to be right.
Yes, I will do the opposite. I used to sit here and do nothing and regret it for the rest of the day. So now I will do the opposite, and I will do something. Excuse me, I couldn't help but notice that you were looking in my direction.
Oh, yes, I was. You just ordered the same exact lunch as me.
My name is George. I'm unemployed and I live with my parents.
I'm Victoria. Hi.
The longer you work in the industry, the more you run the risk of getting too comfortable with your own daily design routine. One day bleeds into the next and everything starts to feel the same. You become dull to your work and fall into a creative haze. This has happened to me. I'm no exception to this. And it usually progresses like this. Routine leads to familiarity. Familiarity leads to comfort and ease. Comfort and ease leads to apathy. Apathy leads to a lack of passion. And a lack of passion makes it difficult to stay inspired. And without inspiration, it's hard to impossible to be creative. So routine is like the serial killer of creativity. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with Dexter, but I encourage you to go Dexter on routine's ass. Moving out of your comfortable routines and into new creative arenas isn't difficult. This is Ty Mattson. He's a designer out of California. And something he did on the side, not because anybody hired him, just because he happened to like a certain show, and that show was Dexter. So he just decided to start creating these posters based off of each season of the show. And he created a bunch of posters, one for each of the seasons they've had. And he did this for no other reason than just to put them on his blog and share these poster designs he created. Well, it happened to get the attention of Showtime. They saw those and they asked him if they could use them on a limited DVD run for the cover art. And so he allowed him. Not only that, they invited him to come up and go through a tour of the set. So he got to check all that out, take some pictures, and he got to meet the actor. Now, all because he just did something just to be creative outside of work, it actually kind of led to work, even though that wasn't his motivation for doing it. And it actually got him a little spot on the show the next season on the opener.
This is Professor Trent Casey. He's an evolutionary biologist and a noted atheist. He has a book out refuting the existence.
That was him with the flashlight looking around that you saw there. So what is creativity? We see forms of creativity every day in our industry. Anyone can be creative. Creativity is diverse as life itself and can manifest itself in a lot of different ways. Here's one artist who decided to see what Yoda would look like as a real person. Here's a hotel built like musical instruments. Someone was inspired by their TV show Big Bang Theory, so they did a geeky type of portrait using keyboard keys. Somebody took their old Mac and turned it into a cat bed. This is a guy up in the Portland area, drives around with all these toys pimping out his car. And this is Universal. Some guy in Saudi Arabia pimped out his camel. He even shaves these patterns into his camels, which I thought were kind of cool. And a lot of people get creative with their facial hair. Some of them are disturbing. Webster's defines creativity as the use of the imagination or original ideas. So creativity is directly tied to imaginative thinking. Creativity is how you think. I think Albert Einstein said it best when he said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited to what we know and understand, while imagination embraces everything and all there will ever be to know and understand. You know, I should point out, I forgot to bring up one slide. Creativity is how you think. That was the Einstein quote I gave you, but probably my favorite Einstein quote is, he said, play is the highest form of research. And that's all I'm really encouraging you to do in terms of creativity is to play. Kids have no problem being creative. They do all kinds of crazy stuff, creative ways of solving problems or dealing with situations. And that said, you don't have to be Einstein to use your imagination. Playing comes natural for kids. So creativity is not based on knowledge, because kids don't know a whole lot compared to an adult who might be in his 50s, you know, but rather knowledge is just a tool that can be used by your imagination. I think that's a really important point. A lot of people get hung up on the fact that they don't know one thing or another, so it keeps them from moving into trying new skill sets, and that's the last thing you want to do. So we need to be childlike in our imaginative thinking and pursue creativity without fear of what others may think. This is a designer by the name of Dave, I'm probably going to slaughter his last name, Lafayette, I think. He's a graphic designer. He does web development, but as a way to kind of just encourage his kids and have fun, he decided to draw pictures on their sandwich bags every day. And he has a Flickr page with just the thousands of these drawings he's done, and it's for no other reason than just to, you know, entertain his kids. He gets a little geeky with it. And then the back of it, I like that one. Now, creativity isn't limited to just creative people. I mean, everybody at some point in their life has been creative. Whether or not they've made a career of it or not is another thing altogether. Dale Price is just a regular dad. He's a Gulf War vet, and he decided to encourage his kids when they're younger, when they're going off to school every morning because they were a little hesitant to go to school, that he was going to dress up as a different character every day when the bus went by, and he was going to wave at it. And so he might dress up as a pirate, or he'll dress up as Batman, or he'll dress up as some Egyptian pharaoh. Now, he doesn't mind embarrassing his kids either, because he also dressed up as Ariel. So don't get crazy with it. You can go too far. It's still fun, although I'd kill my dad if he ever did that. A common creative denominator. Mark Twain, this probably is my favorite quote. You can't depend on your eyes when your imagination is out of focus. I think that's very true. And in context of design, creativity is based on distinct objectives. It's all about how you process ideas, how you relate one thing to another and form creative responses to whatever the task may be, visual, written, auditory, conceptual, or strategic. So creativity, once again, is how you think. This isn't to say all your ideas will be good ones, you know, far from it. Creativity is a battle of the mind. I mean, one aspect of creativity that it made me think of this was the whole recent kind of NSA scandal. Yeah, that was a scandal, but what I really thought was a scandal was the slides that they designed for the government. I'm going, holy cow, those are like really bad. You know, but within that scandal, there's another scandal, which was a creative scandal, is that this was the logo for the prism that the NSA used to eavesdrop on all these different technologies. And they can't even be creative with their own branding because they stole this symbol off of a photographer in the UK. And so they got busted for it. So not only did they get in trouble for the, you know, eavesdropping on people, they also got sued by the photographer for the logo. I thought that was interesting. Creativity is a battle of the mind, and being creative has more to do with how you arrive at an idea, the process, than it is the idea itself. In our industry, the final result of creativity tends to get all the accolades, but in reality, it's all the bad ideas that led up to that final idea that sums up what being creative is all about. Exercising creativity in new ways outside of work may seem intimidating, but intimidation is always the precursor to new growth. And I think that's important. If you're intimidated by something, don't let that hold you back. Just let that be a marker that you know you have an opportunity to learn something new, grow, try something different, and who knows where that may lead. If something intimidates you, then immediately you know you have the potential to become a better creative. I love this quote from art critic Robert Hughes because it's so true. Confidence is the prize given to the mediocre. Nothing frustrates me more than somebody I talk to where they clearly don't really know what they're doing, but they're very confident at it. None of you know who that person is in your own life. The one common denominator with most creative people in and outside our industry is self-doubt, I've found. That seems to be a very common trait that we all struggle with. That alone should encourage you to set your fear aside and pursue creativity with reckless abandon. One of my friends, he lives in Anchorage. His name's Lance LeCanter. He is a very talented designer, a really great illustrator, but there's these art festivals they have in town where he didn't want to just create art because that's what was in it. He wanted to do something new, so he was thinking on what he could do, and he'd never sewn anything in his life, but he decided he was going to give that a shot. And so he started creating these little funky, kind of plushy characters, and they took off. And that's all he sells at these things now. He's creating all these goofy little characters, and it's not because this is what he wants to focus on for his living. It's not what he pays his bills with for the most part, but it's a fun creative exercise that he's done on the side, and it's kind of opened up a new opportunity for him. So even the best struggle, knowing up front you'll create more bad ideas than good ones is important to always keep in mind as you work. This is why drawing and sketching are vital to the creative process, in my opinion. Don't be fooled. Avoiding routine and staying creatively germane is a universal struggle. Now, somebody that you're going to recognize here, because he's from the Lafayette area, is Cody Chamberlain. I think he might have talked here, somebody was telling me. But I've known Cody for quite a few years now. One of the most talented guys I've ever met, great designer. But when he first started off, he was doing, I forget the exact number, I think is like 85% design, 15% comic book related work, and he wanted to flip that. He wanted to become an 85% comic book art and 15% design, and he took a lot of time just working through that and pursuing it and going in front of people, getting reviews of his work. Spent a lot of time inking out these ideas. Nobody hired him to create this comic book graphic novel series called Sweets. He just set off and started doing it on his own for no other reason because he wanted to do it. And so this is a bunch of inkings from that. And then he released Sweets, and it became a really big hit. So much so that he's actually talked to Mark Wahlberg about optioning it for a movie now. So I thought that was pretty interesting, all because he decided one day to kind of make a shift in his career and try something new, and he didn't wait until he had the obvious opportunity to do that. Nobody hired him to create this. He just did it, and he pursued it, and it took him a long time and a lot of hard work, but it did pay off. So it's never easy, but it's always worth doing. Now, creativity is about how you think. When you think and you're approaching a creative idea, there's that moment where you're intimidated. I have projects that come in, and I have a project coming up where it's like a point of sale display that's going to be about 9 feet tall, and it has to be a tree. Now, the creative director, his challenge to me was I want it to look good big in its final form, but I want it to work as a postage stamp icon. That's a little intimidating. So that's kind of freaking me out a little bit, thinking what I'm going to be working on next week. But fear is part of the creative process. That's why I'm bringing this up. whole reason I just played that for you is when a lion roars, it confuses the animal that they're pursuing, and it strikes fear in them. And that fear paralyzes that animal where they can't make rational decisions. They can't respond in a way that's going to help them. They just kind of freeze, and that allows the lion to nail them and makes it his dinner. Fear in the realm of creativity works the same way as the lion's roar. When we're approached with an opportunity to be creative, we might become really intimidated by the task at hand, and fear starts roaring. The roar of fear likes to plant these types of thoughts and self-doubt in your mind. It might start off with, you know, you're not smart enough, or you're not good enough, you're going to fail, someone else could do this better, you should find a new job. Is that coming up? I should find a new remote. You know, you suck, or nobody will like my talk. So it's normal. The fear a lion's prey has is a legitimate one, but the fear in context of creativity is wholly illegitimate. Fear paralyzes creativity and will always push you towards more comfortable, routine ways of thinking. In other words, play it safe. We've all heard that. We've all experienced that. Even though fear presents creativity, it ironically has no problem using it against you as well. We've all played these head games with ourselves, and it's why horror movies are so scary. Now, this is a really cool story that came out last year under the Freedom of Information Act. It was about World War II, and there was a tactical deception unit created for the military, and it was made up of I believe it was like 85,000 creatives, artists, sculptors, sound technicians, and it was specifically designed for nothing but deceiving the enemy. And the nickname they gave this group was called the Ghost Army. And so what these guys would do is they would go by enemy lines, by the front lines, and they'd create these inflatables, which you can see they can just pick up and move them. They're all rubber. And they would install these in different areas so far enough away from the enemy that the enemy could look in their binoculars or whatever, and they see a battalion, and that strikes fear in them, and they start thinking that, oh crap, we're getting flanked on this side or this. And it causes them to react in another way, which is actually what we want them to do, so that we could go in and do what we need to do. Now, the other part of this troop was these sound technicians. So they'd have this visual component with the inflatables. Then they'd have these guys driving around in the woods in Germany by the far enough away from the front line, but that the audio would carry, and it would be sounds of tanks in transport units. And they would play this audio just to reinforce that illusion. And I love this. I thought this is a good example of how our military unit, in terms of these artists who were serving in the military, used fear in order to firmly establish in the enemy's mind an idea that really wasn't true, but it accomplished what they needed. Now, this is where, when you approach fear in your own creativity, how fear affects your thinking is really important. In order to understand why you struggle with being creative, you need to understand how fear affects your thinking. Your brain has billions of cells called neurons, which use electrical impulses to communicate with each other. So when you begin to think about anything, creative or otherwise, millions of these neurons are sending signals to each other in order to formulate thought, and these have been measured and classified into 5 categories of brainwaves. These 5 categories, and this, when I started out putting this talk together, I had no intention of bringing any of this up. This is just, as I started, I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about fear, and I'm going, well, I wonder if anybody studied fear in terms of how it affects creativity, and I found a couple studies where they had, and some of this information is pulled from that, so that's why I'm bringing it up. So the first form of brainwave activity is called beta. Now, beta is your normal consciousness. You're all in beta mode right now, and that's how you think on a day-to-day basis, just doing everyday things. The next form of brainwave activity is called alpha. This is the state just prior to waking up or prior to going to sleep. This is usually when you dream. Theta, this is your subconscious. Delta, this is when you're in deep REM sleep. This is when you're completely asleep. And then the most interesting one that I had no idea existed until I read up on this information is one called gamma. And gamma is a higher mental activity. And come to find out, when you're thinking through and processing ideas and brainstorming and trying to come up with a good idea, you're trying to leave beta and get to gamma, because gamma is where ideas are formed. So it's a gamma level of thinking in order to formulate ideas and solve problems. Now, gamma is the realm of thinking where your ideas are formed, so creativity is birthed from these eureka moments where you reach a gamma level of thinking. So the way you think in terms of getting to a gamma level leads to creativity. The flower represents creativity. Now, here's the interesting thing. This is how fear plays a part in it. Literally, when fear arises, it literally blocks your ability to get to that level of thinking. That's why it's hard to be creative at times. It's really hard to be creative when you're intimidated and you're questioning everything and you don't have a whole lot of confidence. That makes it virtually impossible to reach that level. That's why it's hard. It's because it's blocking your capacity to reach that level. So it's all about turning your fear into a fulcrum in order to reach that level of thinking, in order to be creative, in order to discover those ideas. So when fear strikes, it suppresses and blocks those impulses in your brain. You can't get to beta. You want to use fear as the fulcrum because it's a normal part of any creative process. Just because you're fearful about something, just because you're struggling with something, don't think, oh, I'm doing something wrong. That's normal. It's just you need to realize that's normal and realize that unlike, let's say a lion's coming after you, yeah, you better be fearful and that's legitimate. But if an art director's coming after you, you might be fearful, but that's not legitimate and don't worry about it. Now turn that fear and use it as a fulcrum to become creative and to move into that level of thinking that's going to enable you to come up with those ideas. It doesn't have to paralyze your creativity, but it doesn't, it can, it just doesn't have to. It's your choice, so turn it into a fulcrum. The easiest way to do this is to explore creativity outside of work, and here's why that's important. When you explore creativity outside of work, it's less fearful than work-oriented creativity. There's no deadlines or client expectations. It allows you to be curious without having to qualify it. You don't have to justify your creative ideas, explain it, well, this is why I want to do it this way, and then wait if somebody else is okay with it. Just do it. It lets you get used to failing with little or no embarrassment. Now, obviously, the dad had no problem dressing up like a mermaid, so if you're going to step out that far, yeah, you might get a little blowback on that. No one has to know about your creative pursuits but you. You can choose to share it with other people, but you don't have to. Oops, did I click too far? It's fun, and you only have to satisfy yourself. You have complete creative control. Now, this type of free-range creativity is what I call a smart risk, and will improve your ability to fight fear more effectively when you face creative challenges in your client work. So use fear to your advantage. This is Alan Branch. He started a company with his partner where, his business partner, where the business isn't what most people would consider glamorous or fun for that matter. It's offering an accounting service online for creative people. But even though it's financial and bean counting and nobody finds that very fun, they've made it fun. His company's called Less Accounting. His logo doesn't look like what most accounting software looks like. It's pretty laid back and casual. But he has videos on his site of people who use his accounting software, and you'd think they were talking about the Beatles or something, you know? They're just all ecstatic about how cool it is. So they had fun in context of his company, so he used creativity to market it in that way. But he wanted to do something outside of that business. So they decided to start their own creative conference, and they did it for about 6 years. It's called the Less Conference. And they bring people in who are fire blowers, and they do all kinds of crazy stuff. And it's not like your normal design conference. They don't have keynotes who talk about, okay, here's the process on designing identities or whatever. It's more about creative exploration. So it's more about getting together and just having fun creatively speaking. So I thought that was cool. But in another realm, he liked doing his business, he liked doing the conference, but he decided he wanted something personal that he could do creative. And so he started gathering junk, and he turns them into lamps like this. And I just thought that was a really cool example of using creativity outside of work. Not like he doesn't want to create a business around this. He just does this for fun. This is how he exercises his creativity outside of work. So you want to transform your routine. Let your curiosity flow. You don't want to be the Dead Sea. Creativity is like water. You have to keep it moving, changing, flowing to stay fresh and relevant, or else it can get stagnant fast. Spontaneous, liberal doses of curiosity on a regular basis will neutralize routine and prevent it from getting a foothold on your daily workflow. This is an artist by the name of Mark Sparfel. He's out of Spain, Barcelona specifically, and he's an artist that didn't want to continue doing his traditional painting. He wanted to do something else. And walking around Spain, he noticed that a lot of people would throw away old furniture like this. And so he started collecting this old furniture. He said, there must be something I can do with it. And he took a piece of furniture like this and he started making sculptures like this. And so that became his little creative side experimentation, and it led to flowing into, he does gallery openings, so this just opened up a whole new door for him, and he takes all kinds of furniture and makes these little creatures out of it. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I want you to explode your creativity. The best way to exercise your curiosity is to blow up your routine with TNT. That is, try new things. Stretching your comfort zone doesn't have to be difficult. Here are some easy detonation methods you can approach with curiosity and avoid the routine. Now, this first one, I do this all the time. It's pretty simple. Drive a new route to work. I work out of my home, so that's not too difficult. But like if I'm going to get coffee or somewhere, I'll go back a different way. I did this one day, and I hadn't been down this road in a long time. I didn't know they put a stop sign in. I got a ticket, and I'm like, just blew up on me. But this helps to break patterns that lead to routine, gives your eyes a new visual diet you can get inspired ideas from. My friend Paul Howalt's a designer in Arizona. When he got out of college, he worked with Charles Anderson's studio for about 5 years. He's part of that whole movement where they that classic Charles Anderson look. He helped establish this. Now, Paul's a really great designer. He does impeccable design. He's a really good illustrator. But something that he started doing because he had an interest in it, but he'd never pursued it, was playing music. So he started picking up the guitar again and playing it again. Another thing he does, for no other reason other than being creative, is he started a Instagram page. Now I'm trying to remember what it's called. I think it's like Find a Face or something, but whenever he's out and he sees something, he's looking for faces in areas that they're not supposed to be, and he takes pictures of them. And I just thought it was a fun way to be creative, and he'll go out of his way to drive through an area just for no other reason than to find these unusual faces and everyday items. Another way is to leave your work environment to do your ideation work, to work out your ideas, to do sketching. A familiar environment is comfortable and caters to routine thinking, so leave it. This one, the best advices I ever got from Sam Harrison, who's a creativity speaker out of Georgia. Another good way to do this is do some Lewis and Clarking, I like to call it. Spend time exploring new locations, both near and far, especially when you travel. This is how you build experience that leads to new inspiration. Freya Jobbins is an artist out of Australia. Now, she is originally a police officer, and she got injured on the job, and so she had to go into rehab. And while she was in rehab, she couldn't do anything related to work for about a year. And so she decided to start getting into art because she had had art courses in college, but she obviously never pursued it. And she just decided, well, I think I'm gonna start painting. So she started painting, and that was okay. But it's when she visited a yard sale and she saw a box full of these baby parts from dolls, and it gave her an idea, and she started creating these pieces of art where it's all made up of just throwaway baby doll parts that she collects from everywhere she goes. And it's just really kind of freaky, but really unique. And she's really cool. I talked to her a couple months ago, and she's just a really cool lady. But I thought that was a unique way to discover, and she could have gone back to be a police officer, but she's having a lot more fun doing this. So observe the moment. Pay attention to details others may overlook in common or mundane situations, like let life's spontaneous and humorous situations feed your creativity. You kind of saw that with the video of the guy who animated his wife's joke. That's kind of what I'm talking about here. Here's another good example. This is Eric Barclay. He's an illustrator based out of London, and he noticed that just everyday products, he saw this and he was just throwing them away, and he's looking at the shape of this, and this was the first one he did, and it inspired this. And so he took these products that were tossed away, and he painted on them, and he created these cool little sculptures, and then that gave him more ideas. And so he'd take products like this, and he'd turn them into these. All about because he took the time to observe what most people wouldn't even think about. They just toss it, it's garbage, and he saw a different kind of potential. So, let those moments to observe things really set in. Set your favorites aside. What I mean by this is try new fonts or color palettes, different design styles. I know some of you have your favorite fonts and you haven't loaded a new font in years. I challenge you to close those and load new ones. That's not easy because I have some favorite fonts, but I've done that. It is a good way to kind of break free of your comfort zone in that regard. Start visiting, read a novel you'd normally avoid, or start visiting new websites, etc. It's about tapping the unexpected. This is Jason Mercier. He is an illustrator, and he originally started out traditional. And then his grandmother gave him a bit of advice because he didn't have money to buy paint or canvas. And she said, don't wait to do your art, just use what you have. And he said, well, what do you mean, Grandmother? And he said, well, just look around you, find stuff around you and use that to do your art. And that's when he started seeing a new way of doing his artwork, and that is using found objects. Now he's pretty well established, so he is hired by a beef jerky company to do the Sasquatch, you know. But he'll take everyday objects and he'll collage them together to form these pretty cool portraits of celebrities. Here's Conan O'Brien and Tina Fey, Donald Trump. Now, you look at these, there's no painted areas or cut paper. It's all using objects. It's pretty incredible what you can pull off. Collaborate with friends. Creativity comes easier when you're partnering with others pursuing the same goal. If you don't want to go it alone, and it's easier to do something when another friend's on board and you can both do it together, that's okay. That's a good way to approach it. Make drawing a creative habit. Drawing is still creativity's best friend, in my opinion. Find any excuse to do it. It doesn't have to be difficult. Something that I did just because I felt guilty when I get a package and it'd have a cardboard insert, and I was just throwing it out. I started collecting those cardboard inserts, and my wife thought I was being a hoarder or whatever. You know, I go, no, I'm going to do some. What are you going to do with them? I don't know. I don't know yet, but I'm going to hold on to them. Well, I started doing these about 3 years ago. I call them cardboard doodles. I just take, this is all you need. I take a piece of cardboard. I just do a really crude, rough drawing. Usually it's just a profile. I don't even draw the interior content. And then I cut it out. Once it's cut out, I have the shape. And then it's just simply just drawing on top of it. I ink it, and that's what a cardboard doodle is. So instead of throwing this cardboard away, I turn in my studio has all these cardboard doodles everywhere now. Have fun. In all of this, enjoy yourself and share it with others. Once again, doesn't have to tie into your work. You can do it because you're doing it for a good cause. That's what Jeff Fisher, a friend of mine from Portland, does. He's a designer in Portland, but he serves on, I think it's called the Portland Clown Brigade or what. Personally, clowns kind of scare me. I didn't tell Jeff this, but clowns kind of scare me. I don't like clowns, but that said, he clowns around, which is cool. He designed the logo for their group of clowns. And then he shows up at events and clowns around. So it can be as simple as that. Now, transforming your routine, negative can actually be a positive at times. As we discussed earlier, fear is a negative energy, but you can use it as a catalyst for creativity. That's because creativity is often given opportunity through controversy. Because controversy gives rise to necessity, and necessity, as Plato said, is the mother of invention. Creativity thrives on inventive resourcefulness in response to life experience. Designers are influencers, and our job is to persuade hearts and minds with our work. At least we have the potential to do that. This, however, doesn't have to stay within the arena of commercial work. Let your creativity take a bad situation and leverage it from good. The best example I have of this is this project. This was done by a designer for a specific group in Germany that does outreach to people who get sucked into hate movements, basically. And this specific design they created to give out as free t-shirts to a neo-Nazi gathering. And so they set up a booth and they gave out all these shirts and they looked like this. But the thing is, when the people took the shirts home, when they washed them, this is what would show up. And the message underneath that design after they wash it the first time was saying, you need to take a look at your life. You need to consider what you're doing with it, because you're stuck in a movement that's hating other people for no reason. And it's helped them. It's helped a lot of these people who they've given the shirt out to kind of come out of that movement and kind of reestablish their life without the hatred. And I just thought that was a great way to take a really negative situation and creatively kind of leverage it in order to reach out to people. Now, negative situations in our own lives can inspire us to do certain things. And I was asked to curate a book for Rockport on logos. And me and my friend Paul Holwalt, who I showed you earlier, we put the book together. And we solicited all these people to send in their logos. And it's amazing what people sent in. But this is one that just kind of struck me. I'm going, really? I go, okay, you know, well, logo design is, I'd say about 80% of my projects are branding specific projects. And so I'm pretty compassionate when it comes to logos. And I saw this and it made me laugh. I go, well, that's not getting in the book. But there's a lot of websites out there who really peddle this kind of design philosophy for $49, six logos. You know, normal price is $99. So hey, you're saving a little money. But you know, there's other places that can beat that. Oh yeah, well I'll give you, you know, for $23, I'll give you more logos, and you know, you have endless design revisions. It even gets down to $19 logos. All these frustrate me because I run into them from now and then. And I go, God, this is not cool. I go, screw it, I can beat that. So I came up with 5-minute logo. And if you pay me $5, I'll take 5 minutes and draw you a crappy logo on my iPad and email it to you. And I did it as a joke. You go to the site, you read through it. I'm obviously talking about, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek approach to visual identity, because I refer to everybody ordering as a cheap ass. So you would think they would notice that, you know. But 5minutelogo.com, the guarantee is you can make any suggestion for the design, but more than likely I'll do whatever I want because you're a cheap ass. And this is all on the site, but it doesn't stop people from ordering. You probably won't like it, nor will you want to use it. If you want to change the design, it'll cost you another $5, and no whining. Now, with all of these in place, people have ordered logos. So some people, you know, they might like their pet, their boxer dog, and his name's Tyson, so I did this. You know, another guy was doing a talk about motivational speaking, and his pitch for this talk was make small talk sexy, and he wanted a logo for it. Okay, so I did that. His quote was, "I can't use that. I'll put a bra on it for you," you know. Another ad agency, every Friday they make pancakes for their employers, so they wanted to brand that, so Flapjack Fridays. Some guy running a sewage service in, I believe it was Louisiana, so maybe, I don't know if he's driving around with this on, but this is what he wanted. That was, when I take the logos, they just have to give me the name and the type of business. They don't get to tell me what to draw, so I took the name and came up with that. Now, my link kind of went viral, and it got posted on this Brazilian website that's kind of like the Boing Boing of Brazil, and I've been doing all these, so if anybody goes to Brazil and you see a bunch of ugly logos, that's why. But somebody posted it on, it's like a Christian ministry blog, and so all these churches started ordering things, and this, I'm going, uh-oh, this could get dangerous. And this lady ordered one for her vacation Bible school, and all it was supposed to say is, "This little light of mine." I go, "Oh, cool, yeah, I can do that." So I did this. Once again, she said, "That'll scare the kids." I go, "Well, I mean, okay." Another place called High Peak Baptist Church asked me to do one, and I just couldn't stop laughing when I drew this. So 5-minute logo is very cathartic for me because I get to take out all my frustration on these little logo projects. So if you want to check out more, you can see all the ones I posted on the Facebook page here, and that's the domain for that. So in closing, set a good design example. Designers are often victims of the graphic precedents they create, be it good or bad. When it's all said and done, what difference will your work make? I encourage everyone here to donate your time and creative energy to at least one good cause or charity every year. And I've learned this by example from a good friend of mine by the name of Justin Ahrens. Justin runs a design studio out of Chicago, suburb of Chicago, called Rule 29 is the name of his studio. And he works with an NGO based out of Africa. And the work his studio does to help them with their outreach program, they go into slums around Nairobi and other African countries, and they set up microeconomic situations so the people can make have a sustaining source of income and a job to support their families. And so a lot of his design and creative efforts to help them market themselves and to get the message out is really facilitating that. One of the things he helped them brand is something called Kanjo. And this is all about taking people who live in the slums, and they taught them a trade on how to make these really cool handmade sandals out of renewable resources. This shows you what they look like, and then those are being sold, and all the proceeds go directly back to their community. So Justin's been a really big influence on me. A couple years ago, he invited me to go with his team to Nairobi, so I spent about 10 days in the slums, and it was pretty awesome. If you want to check out a trailer for that video, you can go to thisismynormal.com and check out that trailer if you want to see more about that. So I love this quote from Arthur Ashe. Success is a journey, not a destination. And all of us have been, at one time or another, have gone into a cemetery, and we've seen a tombstone. This just happens to be Mel Blanc's tombstone. He's the voice of the Looney Tunes, so Porky Pig and everybody like that. But when people observe a tombstone like this one, they see a date like this on it. He was born this year, and he died this year. Now, at some point in history, someone decided to sum up life in this simple graphic matter. But the dates aren't what really matter. What really matters is the dash. In other words, you can say the dash is your life. You're a dash. So don't let routine flatline your creativity like this dash. You know, I want to encourage you to step out of your comfort zone, try something creative, and get creative with your dash. Break out of your routine, use fear as a fulcrum, and let life inspire your creativity, because life is too short for bad art. And if you want to download all the notes, you can use this link. Thanks for having me.